if any of you don't already know, I'm going to Chile tomorrow. And I mention it in one sense because the following Sunday will be the Vyasa Puja celebration for Bhakti Kavi Atulananda Maharaj. And as a result, I won't be broadcasting on this format next week. I don't know if there's any of my talks in Chile will be broadcast or not. That's
yeah, they will, Guru Maharaj. We got the times. I'll make an announcement at the end.
Okay, so something will be going on at that time, but it won't be like me answering questions. So, but I'm looking forward to my visit, and I see there are already some devotees from Europe there, from Great Britain, who've already gone ahead of me to Chile, and of course, so many Latin American devotees. I look forward to being with all of them. I had a nice time there last year for the same period. This year, of course, Atulananda Maharaj is dealing with a cancer diagnosis, and apparently he's been pretty successful with that, thankfully, in terms of dieting and so forth. But so again, I look forward to seeing him and all the devotees. And at the moment, Ganesh is doing something here on my screen to improve the production here. I have a new microphone that I was gifted, and I don't know if it's an improvement or not, but if any of you think yes or no, you can weigh in on that. And with that,
maybe turn it up a little.
Yeah, it's a little quiet, Guru Maharaj.
The word on the street here, Ganesh, is that it's a little quiet here. So is that any better? Does it get any better as I turn the volume of the computer up, or no?
No. Maybe in the settings.
Yeah, I turned it up all the way.
Oh, it's all the way.
So there's something, maybe it's in the firmware or something. I have to look into it later.
Should I go ahead and use it or go back to the other system?
I mean, I can hear myself here, but I've got the volume right up. I don't know. How is everybody online?
I see Sajjan shaking his head no.
No.
It's not good, not good. So we'll revert back to the previous setup. Pausing for technical reasons here. Hold on. Is that any better?
Very good.
Yeah,
I'm getting it very good on that. That seems to be better. So we'll take this off.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's then take the questions.
Okay, so the first question today is from Lalita. I'd say here in Brighton, but as you see, she's in Chile at the moment. So
yes. Okay.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you. I can see you. Good. What's the question?
So I was thinking about Paramatma and caitya-guru, and I read in essence that they are the same, and that for a devotee who's surrendered to Krishna, the Paramatma starts to become more personally involved and merciful as Bhagavan, rather than staying neutral. But I've also heard this happens after Nishtha or Ruchi stage of bhakti. So my question is, what does that mean for a sadhaka in earlier stages? And how is the Paramatma or caitya-guru to be heard and understood in the heart? Please, can you share some thoughts on this? Thank you.
Yes, yes. Um, the classic example or analogy given in the Upanishads is two birds in the same tree. The tree is in the metaphor, I guess you say, is the body, and the two birds are one, the Paramatma, and the other bird is the Jivatma. And the latter, the Jivatma, is eating the fruits of the tree, some of which are bitter, some of which are sweet. And the Paramatma, as you said, is neutral as a witness, watching and waiting for the other bird, the Jivatma, to turn towards him. In fact, the book that Darshan Press is in the process of publishing is titled after this this metaphor, and the graphic on the cover will represent it: two birds in the same tree, the Jiva and the Paramatma. The title of the book is Birds of the Same Feather, Gaudiya Vedanta, something, what is it, the nature of the self and nature of the Atma and Gaudiya Vedanta, something like that. So, yes, at a point, the Paramatma is thought to be present as a witness, but the Jiva is turned away. And there's a famous verse from the Bhagavatam that speaks about this also. Vayam dutita viniveshtasyat viparyo. Forget it all. But the Jiva is turned away from Bhagavan. Because he's turned away, then his natural position as a relational entity who has an eternal relationship with Bhagavan is covered. And as he turns towards the Lord, then of course, proportionately, his nature as a relational entity manifests. When I say relational entity, I mean that the Jiva is not properly understood as an entity in isolation. It is a relational entity. So you cannot really understand the Jiva for what the Jiva is, the Jiva Tattva, without the Godhead, Paramatma or Bhagavan, being in the picture, because we have an eternal relationship with Bhagavan as a servant. So that side of us, anyway, which is the fullness of ourself, the fullness of our identity, our telos, our destiny, is covered. So your question is to give that, frame that a little bit. Your question is, what happens before the higher stages of sadhana bhakti, where within your question it's thought that at that time the Paramatma plays a more active role rather than a passive role. This is answered in Chaitanya Charitamrita in the very opening verse, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's commentary on that verse. The verse of the Chaitanya Charitamrita begins with this: Vande Guru Isha Bhaktan Ishan Isha Avatar. Vande Guru. So it says, I offer my obeisances to my gurus. And Krishnadas Kaviraj explains there's the Diksha Guru and the Siksha Guru. And they're both equally spiritually qualified, but they function differently. One imparting the mantra, the other imparting instruction, while either one is capable of both. Right, qualified to do both. in the fullest sense of the term of Siksha Guru, for example. There's lesser forms or less full notions of Siksha Guru that may be employed at times, but he gives the full picture. It's not a one's more qualified, one's less qualified, but they have both fully qualified. They function differently. Now, with regard to your question, the guru, this could be the diksha guru or the siksha guru, but the guru is the external manifestation of the Paramatma. Now your question is answered. So, in one sense, before the guru, the Paramatma starts to become active, realized, experienced directly. This is how your question seems to go. What's the position of the devotees with whom or for whom that hasn't begun yet to occur, right? And so, of course, the guru is there. The guru is the manifestation of the Paramatma and external manifestation. But that doesn't mean that as we go forward in progress to Nishta, Ruchi, Asakti, we don't need the guru anymore, because now we're just going to talk to the caitya-guru. No, the guru is present in our life in all stages. In fact, the guru, as I many times said, is the form in which Krishna comes to us more than he does in any other way or any other form, more than the deity in the temple. It's kind of a custom manifestation for each particular disciple. And this is a strong emphasis in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. In fact, the neophyte devotees characterized in a very basic sense in the Bhagavatam as one who senses that Krishna is present, God is present in the deity, but does not understand or sense the measure or the extent to which God is present in the devotee, in the teacher, in the guru, without whose instruction and example we would not know to bow down before the deity. So there's this disconnect there, if you will. Krishna says things like he does, for example, to Arjuna and Adi Purana, that those who say they are my devotee are not my devotee. Probably heard this verse before. But those who say that they are a devotee of my devotee, they are my devotees, right? So this is a strong emphasis in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the role of the teacher, of the guru, of the sadhu. And he or she is, again, the external manifestation of the Paramatma, who doesn't go away. What do I mean by that? That the Paramatma, who's the overlord of the material world, and is the witness in the tree, of the body, of the jiva, in every lifetime and so forth, is there witnessing and so forth, but not talking because the jiva is not listening, right? But when he starts to listen, starts to inquire, then that Paramatma manifests as the guru. That said, the Paramatma feature of the Absolute, as the devotee advances in sadhana and comes to the stage of ruchi. Ruchi is characterized partially by nadanam, najanam, nasundarim, kavitam va. This is a way of speaking poetically about the entirety of material existence that the Paramatma is the presiding over. He's presiding over the whole material world of material desires. They won't be fulfilled without his sanction. But if we have no material desires, then what relationship do we have with that feature of Bhagavan? So in that stage, higher stage, Ruchi, he leaves, but the Guru doesn't leave. And Mahaprabhu says in his verse of Shikshastakam that I just cited, that is about Ruchi, he says, further, Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Va Jaganisha Kamahe Mama Janmani Janmanishvare Bhavatad Bhakti Rahai Takitohi. The implication is that the Paramatma is now replaced with the Ishta Devata of the devotee, with whom he or she will has an eternal relationship in Leela, not with the overlord of the world, right? Because now you have no desires in relation to the world; you desire only bhakti. And given that, it's notable. Returning to how I was earlier speaking about the Guru being the external manifestation of the Paramatma. In making this statement, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that he is Sakshad Brajendranandana. So the Guru is the external manifestation of the Paramatma in the Paramatma sense of Paramatma, and remains as such as the Paramatma, if you will, is displaced and replaced by Krishna, for example, in our sampradaya, who is our Ishtadevata, our deity. So directly representing the very caitya-guru, if you will, who is Bhagavan himself, who will replace the four-armed manifestation of the Paramatma, who's the overseer of the world. That's a little complicated there, but suffice to say that we don't see, examples of higher devotees communicating with Bhagavan independently of the Guru, although he may. Krishna may speak to the devotee, show himself to the devotee, but Pujapat Sridhar Maharaj used to tell us this, that if Krishna gives you darshan or speaks to you from within your heart, and he says, do this, what should we do? Sridhar Maharaj said, we should say, excuse me for 1 minute, please, and let me ask my Guru. And then you will ask the Guru, is this the guy that you're talking about? Was that him? And is that what he said? What he asked, is that accurate? This way the Guru plays such an important role to separate us from our imagination, for example, to verify Krishna's presence, to represent him so accurately and so forth. So the answer to your question is the Guru. How does the Paramatma, when the Paramatma is not there, or just witnessing, and he's neutral, so to speak, but it's also the Guru when he becomes active and an active participant. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you so much.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your question. What else?
And the next question is from Sahadev, and he says, Dear Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Are there any contemporary Vaishnavas that you like to hear from or encourage your students to hear from?
prose, no?
No, it's not. But the question that throws me up there, I don't, sometimes I try to find speakers to listen to, but I can't say I've found anyone in particular who's an inspiration at this time to that I would recommend. I mean, there may be out there. I don't, I'm busy with my work. I don't have a lot of time to look for them, but I am eager for such, I would say. My life example is there in that regard, that I took shelter of Prabhupada, and in his absence felt an absence, if you will, and the absence is what drew me to Puranadi Maharaj, to whom Prabhupada opened the door to, of course. And there at Puranadi Maharaj's Math, I met Puri Goswami Maharaj, who I also had a relationship with. When Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj was doing his tour, I was the only person in North America of Gaudiya Vaishnav temple to invite him to come. And he was a world preacher, very learned and spiritually advanced, kind of a spiritual senior nephew to me. I had a particular relationship with him that he more or less, which was different, I would say, than with his disciples, which was his own preference. But right now, there may be many, or some, or few. I'm not sure. So I can't really mention anyone in particular. That's a particular inspiration to me, that has the role of a sadhu, guru, teacher, and so on. What else?
So the next question is from Vishnu here in Brighton.
Yes.
Dhanyavad Pranam Srila Tripurari Swami. Please, will you speak something on the difference in rasa tattva between the Dvaraka Vasis and the devotees in Mathura?
Well, yes, I can say a few things. As I mentioned before, Rupa Goswami states in Bhagavatamrta, he may state it in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu too, I don't recall, but he states that Krishna is perfect in Dvaraka. He's more perfect in Mathura. He's most perfect in Vrindavan. He says that the reason that he's most perfect in Vrindavan is because there are examples of his mercy there that exceeds any example that we can find in a Mathura Leela or the Dwarka Leela. And one of them would be, for example, blessing Putana with Vatsalya Bhav, given how she tried to commit infanticide, I guess you would call it, to kill an infant by smearing poison on her breast. That this was the astounding to Uddhava, who's Shastravid, very learned, and he came to the conclusion, who in their right mind, he said, would take shelter of anyone other than Krishna, given his merciful disposition as seen in Vrindavan. That's a praise of Vrindavan Krishna. That's one reason. And the second reason is that he shows greater madhurya, sweetness. I'm using madhurya in a broad term here, not madhurya rasa per se, but sweetness, as opposed to a majestic
manifestation where there's Aishvarya, so this intimacy in Madhurya. And then, interestingly, he says that because mercy is greater there, the intimacy is greater there, and the Aishvarya is greater there as well. And there's two ways to think about the Aishvarya. And that one is that, well, he shows, for example, the Aishvarya in a Prakat Lila of Vrindavan during the Brahma Vimohan Lila, that Narayan is coming from him, and so many Brahmas and Jivas and so on and so forth, right? A very extraordinary, majestic manifestation. This is one example. And the other example is the devotees themselves, in relation to him, represent the fullest manifestation of Vaishvarya because it controls him. So that's a little bit of an aside from what you're asking, but Rupa Goswami has distinguished between the manifestations of Krishna that correspond with the bhavas of these different principal locations within Goloka. Goloka is distinguished by these three centers of devotion: Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dvaraka. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, I believe in Rag-Bhakti-Chandrika, speaks of Dvaraka as a Dvaraka Bhaktas as Vaidhi Bhaktas. Mathura Bhaktas as Vaidhi mixed with Rag, and Vrindavan is pure Rag. So it would seem that the Mathura affords a little more intimacy. Maybe an example of that is I'm going to cite the example of the Dvija Patnis, the wives of the Brahmins. Of course, they came to full Madhurya, and the implication of that Leela is that they took birth in Goloka, in Vrindavan, not in Mathura, but they had some more Aishvarya background, I suppose you could say, that was manifest, present. So, but anyway, like I say, I think the real answer comes from Rag-Bhakti-Chandrika, where Vishnu says, if you mix the two, you can go to, this will be a sadhana for attaining Krishna Bhakti in Mathura. It's a little interesting, your question, because, well, in the Prakat Lila, everybody from Mathura went to Dvaraka, right? Yeah. So it would appear that some of the there's a mix, would be a mix there as well. But there are residents of Dvaraka who aren't from Mathura. I mean, the Pandavas would be an example. So it's an interesting question. There's some things that come to my mind. I would say I'm not an expert on Dvaraka Bhav or Mathura Bhav. That's not something I've paid a lot of attention to. But those are things that I have heard from our charges that differentiate them. I wish I could. Well, I mean, they're obviously there's an obvious difference between the Bhav and Mathura, and that in Vrindavan. It's less obvious, the difference between Mathura and Dvaraka, but there is a difference. A little more Rag in Mathura. There are some examples. What else?
The next question is from Ramakeli in Bulgaria. And she says, my loving obeisances, Guru Maharaj. I was wondering why, if Krishna's Leela is meant to resemble human life, Why does he mature approximately 1.5 times quicker than an ordinary human child? Thank you.
Well, the example of Krishna's being mature for his age is not, or the fact that Krishna is mature for his age is not a non-human characteristic. I think Rupa Goswami gives the example of a prince, the son of a king, in his experience or in those times was often that kind of a boy, who was destined to be a king because of his birth from the previous life and so forth, and he was mature for his age and so on. So it's an exception within humanity. We find them genius boys, girls, as may be the case, or super musicians, or just mature for their age. Some are later bloomers, and some mature earlier. So it's not a non-human characteristic. It's an exception to the norm within humanity, but a very desirable and attractive exception. So when a daughter or a son of someone is very intelligent for their age and mature and can communicate and articulate, so then it's really something that the parents are very proud of, and everybody says, "Oh, that boy is very special," and so forth. So this is the way to understand Krishna's maturity. Hope it helps. Are you there? Madam Mohan, I think I lost you. There, the screen was frozen. Did you hear my answer? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Guru Maharaj. I think Madan Mohan got cut off, so he may rejoin.
So you did hear my answer to Ram Kali's question?
Yeah,
okay.
We heard your answer.
So the host is missing, but the hosted are here.
I can ask a question while we wait, Guru Maharaj.
Okay.
I've often wondered in the Brhad-Bhagavatamrta how, as Narad goes to the different lokas and meets the different kind of residing deity, Brahma, Shiva, and so forth, Prahlad, they all voice that they haven't received Krishna's mercy. So I'm wondering kind of how to understand this in relation to the experience of a sadhaka, where, I mean, a lot of times you feel like you have received, but maybe you can't take full advantage of it. So how do you kind of see this dichotomy?
If I understand it properly, what you're asking is that sadhakas know that they have received some mercy, and here we're finding examples of great devotees who say that they have not received any mercy.
Yeah,
right.
I guess, yeah, I'm just wondering about what makes them voice that, because for some reason it's hard to understand for me.
Well, I think that one way to understand that is that as we finite jivas approach the infinite, the more our finiteness becomes apparent. The more his graciousness, his kindness, his affection, which is infinite, infinite kindness, infinite compassion, infinite grace, and so forth, becomes apparent. And the less qualified, if you will, or you're qualified, the less you are an appropriate object of mercy is felt. And therefore we hear devotees speaking about themselves in ways that we don't like to hear. They're belittling themselves and But that's kind of the dynamic, if you will. The closer you come to the infinite, the more you know what it means to be finite. And of course, the interesting thing is here that the more, well, to use an Upanishadic statement, one who says they know Brahman does not know Brahman. One who says, I don't know Brahman, knows Brahman. I've given the story of the father from the Jaban who sent his son to Benares to learn, and his son came back, and the father said, "Did you learn? What did you study?" Well, you didn't study Srimad Bhagavatam, then you didn't get an education to go back. Went back, studied the Bhagavatam, came back. Father said, "So did you study Srimad Bhagavatam?" Said, "Yes, now I understand why you sent me back. Now I understand Srimad Bhagavatam." Father said, "We'll go back, study again." Went back, studied Bhagavatam the third time. Whatever it was, came back, and Father said, "So did you study Srimad Bhagavatam second time?" "Yes." "Did you understand?" "Now I understand why you sent me back a second time." So well, we better go back then, third time. Third time he came back. Father said, "So did you study for the third time?" He said, "Yes." "Did you understand Bhagavatam?" He said, "I cannot understand Srimad Bhagavatam." Father said, "Now you've understood Srimad Bhagavatam." So Pujyapat Sridhar Maharaj used to say that the closer we are, the more we feel that we haven't gone anywhere because he's so great. We haven't made any progress. Then one of the devotees, I remember when he said this on one occasion, he said, "But what if you really, feel that you're low and didn't make any progress?" And Sridhar said, "Really? Really?" As if, well, that's great. then there's the sign, right? So when we're progressing towards the infinite, it's infinite. And then, where are we in relation to the infinite? How can you measure? It's like, so this is kind of the experience. Therefore, those who say, "I have not received any mercy," this is an expression of those who really have expressed the mercy, but it comes out like that. That's how it's expressed. Does that help? Whereas the neophyte will think, actually, I did get some mercy here. So you need more mercy. And then you will feel like, I'm not the object of mercy. Of course, in Brhad-Bhagavatamrta, there's a comparison that's being made too, right? I'll just see this devotee has received greater mercy than me. I'm nothing in comparison. That's another feature of the section that you cite. Okay, what else? I don't think Manamohan has returned.
I'm back. Sorry, my connection dropped for a second.
Back. Okay, good to have you back.
So the next question is from Dhruv Agrohal. And he says, "Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my Dandavat pranams. How is the concept of evil explored in Gaudiya Vaishnavism? It seems like evil is not investigated as thoroughly as it is in other traditions. Does evil exist? And if so, how is it defined in Vaishnavism?"
Well, I wouldn't say it's not discussed. It seems to be discussed quite a bit in that in a completely Vaishnava sense, it's the turning away from Bhagawan. It's aparad, offense to Bhagawan, to his devotees. It's lack of, or the opposite of, kindness to others, which is central to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. What does Bhaktivinoda Thakur say? He says, "Jive doi Krishna nam sarvadharma sar." The essence of dharma is Krishna nam, to chant the name of Krishna and show kindness to others. So there, in the Bhagavad Gita, so there are those who don't show kindness to others. They commit violence to others. one of the reasons that we advocate, vegetarianism, for example. The Bhagavad Gita speaks of the divine and the demonic. So there is demonic, offensive, adharmic behavior, and maybe you're trying to get at something more by the word evil itself. But that's what comes to my mind as things that are contrary to Dharma. They're negative influences. I suppose, well, in Christianity, there's a deity that personifies evil, Satan, right, the devil. I don't think we have such a negative deity. Well, Kali comes to mind, right, of the personification of the Yuga, for example. So all these things are would seem to fit into the broad category of evil, adharma, himsa instead of ahimsa. Bhagavatam is full of the battles between good and evil. So many stories that can be boiled down to good and evil, and good prevails, and the deity that presides ultimately over the good is Vishnu. We sometimes would also, the text would also characterize the evil or the demonic, the devas and the danavas, devas and the asuras as being influenced by tamaguna. As opposed to sattvaguna, or I guess there's both a demonic and a good and a bad aspect of the rajaguna. Material improvement, rajaguna, for good or bad reasons. So I don't see exactly what you're asking about. I'm not catching what you're thinking, unless you just hadn't thought about it in the ways that I'm speaking. When you say that evil is not a big subject, another thing comes to mind. There's the whole theodicy argument. Why is there evil in the world if God is good? And you may be more familiar with Western traditions debating this, dealing with it, trying to explain it to the satisfaction of themselves and their constituents. It's a Western term, theodicy, but from what I've seen, the most definitive book on the topic of evil, I forget the name of it. I do have a copy of it, but it concludes that the Hindu system deals with this most comprehensively, with its doctrine of karma and so on. So if God is good, in other words, why all good, why is there evil? Without going into the many ways it's addressed in different traditions within Hinduism, I would say there is a robust argument within Hinduism, and that would include Vaishnavism on the topic. I'll see if I'm not going to have access to the book for a while because I'm going to Latin America. I'll try to pull it out and send you a reference to it and get a copy. It's quite a tome. What a large book to read. Okay, what else?
So the next question is from Madhav Mehta. And he says, Dandavat Pranam Guru Maharaj. If a person has not taken shelter of a devotee and does realize the value of bhakti, but is only carrying out what is their best conception of Nishkam Karma Yoga in accordance with what Krishna says in the Gita, would they, through sincerity of their efforts, eventually come in touch with a pure devotee under whom they find shelter? Similarly, if a person has taken to the Gyan Marg but doesn't understand the value of devotion, but is sincere in their search, does that sincerity and detachment from material conception of life give them sruti to come to a devotional understanding through the mercy of a Vaishnav? I'm trying to understand the position of those who have chosen other paths mentioned in the Gita. Is it the sincerity of their efforts that gives them the sruti for devotion and a devotee enters their life? Or do they reach the path of devotion by the causeless mercy of the devotee? Thanks a lot, Gurudev.
Well, the varnashram system, which is not in place at this time, is one in which the varna, the occupation of everyone, is determined, and excuse me, Krishna. And there are prescribed duties in the Shastra that those persons should follow, and following results in good karma. It's a pravrti marg. Now, in the broader sense, these pravrti marg, which is a path of acquisition rather than a path of detachment and renunciation. The pravrti marg is licensed acquisition. You have a license now to take from the world. In order to take, there's some measure of giving in the form of a sacrifice or whatever might be the case, as prescribed. So, in the broader sense, the pravrti marg is meant to bring us to the nivritti marg, right? So we get faith in the scriptural statements because by applying them within the varnashram system, we get the desired result. Oh, so we have faith. So we look more closely at the scripture. And of course, if we follow it carefully, then we're getting all these good results, good karma, over lifetimes, right? And at a certain point, well, however good it gets, it's not fulfilling. And so this is one of the ways in which one turns away from acquisition towards renunciation, and an opening for inquiry into Brahman arises. So typically from Dharma Jignasu, inquiry into Dharma, when that's adequately done, comes Brahma Jignasu, inquire into the self. So the pravrti marg, in a broad sense, is meant to lead to the nivritti marg. After all, in the pravrti marg, you have dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So it culminates in moksha, and then the prescribed dharmas no longer apply because you've arrived at the conclusion. So therefore, we're told with regard to Harinam not to criticize the karma marg. We have to criticize it in comparison to bhakti, but we understand that it's virtuous, it's prescribed by Bhagavan, and it's useful for people who don't have the adhikar or the required faith in the efficacy of bhakti to take up the path. Now that taking up of that path, as I say, well, from karma to gyan, then there's devotion. So this, and we'll get to that. But there's this one, the gradual path, and then there's the shortcut. Sadhu Sangha comes in, and suddenly you're inquiring about rasa, although your qualifications may be less in some respects than a person on the path of varnashram, but you got grace and you have an interest in it, and so forth. So all good. But the gradual path is that, as you say, well, from performing the varnashram with the desire to attain good material results when it comes to performing those prescribed duties with detachment from the result. Now that could manifest as detachment from the results and offering the results to Bhagwan. So, but it may not, right? And the determining factor there would be association. So let's say one becomes to nishkam karma, then he or she performs the prescribed duties in the varnashram system, and then with detachment from the fruits, doing it because it should be done, it's a duty, and so forth. Whatever the results, and it doesn't matter. So this will lead to gyan marg, but without association, then the likelihood of it manifesting as detachment from the results, the fruits, and offering those to Bhagawan, the likelihood of that occurring is limited, I would say at best. That said, within the varnashram system, which involves worship of many gods and goddesses, which is contrasted by Krishna's statement at the end of the Gita, where he says, Mamekam sharanam braja aham tvam sarva papeਭyo. Give up the Dharma, worship me alone. Why does he say me alone? Because the Dharma marg, or the karma marg, also known as varnashram, involves many gods and many goddesses, right? Because me alone. So give that up, take shelter of me alone, go from varnashram to bhakti. And that said, among the many gods and goddesses that are worshipped in varnashram, Vishnu is also there. So there's a little bit of bhakti in the varnashram system. So if you're bhakti, if you're varnashram, typically within varnashram, people have different gods or goddesses who they, seem to identify with, right? As they're the main god for them. If it's Vishnu, then there's a little more bhakti in your varnashram, and that can be then the cause of coming to the bhakti marg, or coming to nishkam karma and giving the results of your execution of the dharma for the service of Vishnu. So there's a couple of different ways. Through sadhusanga, or in this way without sadhusanga, although that would bring you to sadhusanga as well. So whereas I should also mention rag marg, our path, cannot come out of that. Only way it can come is from Kripa, from the association with the sadhus of that type. Rupa Goswami makes that distinction in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu when he explains at the end of the conclusion of his discussion of Raganuga Bhakti. So, Bhakti is a particular path, right? And it is the path through which the relational quality of the jiva, inherent relational quality of the jiva, will manifest. Without bhakti, that is not going to manifest. That's why some people will attain sadhuja, because they have not taken the sadhana by which their swabhav as a servant of Bhagawan will manifest. So the real gift of the sadhus then is that sadhana, that practice, that teaching, that particular teaching by which it will come out. It's there in the scripture, but to sort all that out is without good association is difficult. So even if someone in varnashram, as I say, has Vishnu as his chosen deity and accrues really qualification for bhakti through nishkam karma, mixed form of bhakti, then he will get sadhusanga. So I don't know if it was a long question and it's a long answer. I don't know if I've covered everything that your question concerned. I can't remember all the details of it, but there's still a little time. If not, you can comment and ask further. but right. I mean, you talk about Gyan Marg, Sayuja, Mukti. This is not the full form of Mukti. This is an indistinct form of Mukti because the relational quality of the jiva is not manifest there. That's obvious. And why? Because the path taken doesn't address that. Sanatana gives an example. What does he say? You can't get the same thing with an axe that you can get with a scissors. He's comparing two paths. Right? The scissors, the Gyan Marg, the axe. Okay, cut it off. The scissors is more. You could get a more refined result. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, there are a couple of more questions, Gurmaraj, if you want to take one. Or...
Yeah, go ahead.
So the next question is from Madan Gopal, and he says, Dandavats to you, Guru Maharaj. I've been philosophically frustrated by a point that is often made in the context of the varnashram/women gurus debate. The advocates for establishment of varnashram against progressive women's roles cite Dharma Shastras and Manu Samhita and then reference the famous sruti, smrti, puranadi verse that without reference to the Shastra, bhakti is not bona fide or a disturbance to society. Jiva Goswami comments on this verse in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that one should accept the Vaishnav scriptures. I think that sometimes there is a broad idea that the entire Veda is ultimately Vaishnav scripture. But can you explain or reference more specifically how Manu Samhita or Karmakanda section of the scripture are not the Shastras that we should emphasize or structure our lives and society around? I doubt that adherents to this philosophical camp can be convinced of a more bhakti emphasis in the bhakti marg, but I guess we should certainly know the pitfall of emphasizing karma and rules over bhakti. How can we simultaneously avoid the idea of cheapening bhakti's grace and jumping over the rules?
I'm in trouble with that lesson. Cheapening bhakti's grace and jumping over the rules. Well, let's just forget that for a minute. But these are two distinct paths. Again, bhakti is a nivriti marg. It's a para-pravriti marg. Okay, jnana is a path of nivriti, giving up, renunciation. Varnashram is the karma marg. It's the path of acquisition. Bhakti is the path, I'm going to call it para-pravriti. It's acquisition of transcendence and the relationship with Bhagawan, entrance into Leela, and so forth. In a broader sense, it's also a nivriti marg. It's a path towards transcendence. It's giving up material life. It's pursuit of transcendence and enlightenment. So the karma marg is another way to think about it. Our path, the main sadhana is sankirtan. It's the singular ritual. Karma marg, Varnashram is full of all kinds of rituals. We have one ritual, Nam Sankirtan. Everyone is qualified to perform it. It unites, Sankirtan unites, and Varnashram divides. Another way to underscore the difference between the two. Right? In a Varnashram society, there may be the two, the bhakti marg and the Varnashram social religious marg may parallel. They don't have to be at odds with one another, but there are instances in which they will be at odds with one another, in which case we see many examples in Chaitanya Charitamrita of Mahaprabhu foregoing the Varnashram because it interferes with bhakti. By Varnashram, he was from a certain Brahmin family, was not supposed to, in a sense, a sannyasi was not supposed to be eaten from someone who cooked over here from a different situation. from varnashram perspective. For example, the Mathura Brahmin that he met. But when he realized that Mathura Brahmin was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, then he said, well, wherever there's a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, doesn't matter what caste he's from or background, if she's from, I'm going to eat there. That'll be my good fortune. So there are many examples of this in Chaitanya Charitamrita to illustrate the point. That said, varnashram is a path that is largely concerned with material life. The Gita says, Krishna tells Arjuna in the second chapter, what does he say there? That Trigunya Vishaya Veda Nistrigunya Bhavarjuna Nirvana Manita Sattvasto Niyoga Chirmatma. The Vedas deal mostly with the modes of nature. He's talking about varnashram. So put that aside. Take shelter of me. Go to the Uttar Mimamsa, not the Purva Mimamsa, the conclusion of the Vedas. Not how to be a perfect human, but how to understand the difference between humanity and spirituality altogether. So, excuse me, given the nature of varnashram as a social religious system, ordained, which means, in a broad sense, a social religious system that promotes transcendence, that extols the virtues of Bhagwan and bhakti for that matter, although not overtly with regard to the path. It's not overtly advocating take up bhakti, but those statements are there, and there for those who look carefully and over time, after becoming religious and thoroughly inquiring into religion, they go deeper. They get faith in the book as it works. They look deeper and they find, oh, there's something more. Look at this, and so forth. So, given the nature of varnashram, we should understand that it's relative. Given that it's relative, then in different times, in different circumstances, in different cultures, it'll be applied differently according to those circumstances. And you will see that in India, for example, even in the course of centuries, how the different rules have changed, altered to accommodate new circumstances as they arise. I mean, that's basically what a social system has to do. The social system, any social system, is what's the word? Is flexible. Any social system has to be flexible because new circumstances, social, legal concerns will arise. That happens, right? We find it in modern society. You have your laws, and they make new laws because new circumstances arise where new moral and legal questions appear, and you have to determine. And so a new law is written, right? A new code is given. So this is a significant difference between the texts that deal with the varnashram and the texts that deal with gyan or with bhakti. Bhakti can be applied, differently in different circumstances and so forth. But there's a relativity to the varnashram that we don't find in the path of bhakti. So if you were to advocate varnashram by way of looking back to how it was applied hundreds or more 1,000 years ago, and look at it as an absolute law that now must be applied in all circumstances, I don't think you're really understanding varnashram very well, or its history, if you will, in the world, in India, in Hindu culture, and so forth. So, for example, you have the Vedas, which are said to be unauthored, and then you have these smrti texts that are being authored. Gopal Bhatta put together a kind of what was his book called? Satkar Deepika. I forget. It's a whole book for Vaishnavas that describes how to perform the different samskars, like the marriage samskar, the birth samskar, the name-giving samskar, the funeral samskar. These are all big events in human life. So there's a whole varnashram system how to deal with those, and you worship this god and that god. So he gives a whole Vaishnava way of doing it, and Vishnu is only worshipped in all the instances. So this is something that he developed for the Gaudiya Vaishnava community, or Hari Bhakti Vilas is focus a little different, but similar, giving some social structure and dealing with for householder life within Gaudiya Vaishnavism, where concerns arise that don't arise for renunciates, right? So I'm just giving an example. The whole thing is somewhat flexible. So if you look, for example, with regard to the role of women, I mean, all over the world, I suppose, in many cultures, let's say, at least for some period of time, a long period of time, it was thought that women were only capable to do certain things and not other things, and we find that's just not true. I mean, you're not supposed to deny your experience through observation. In the name of something that's some people say, well, we never went to the moon, and if I went there, I still wouldn't believe it, because Prabhupada didn't believe it. I mean, that's just kind of an insanity. When you see practically that women are different from men, we have different sensibilities. That's the two genders. That's obvious, but women can be apply themselves in fields equally or better than men than they thought in previous times, both in Europe, in Asia, around the world, was the case. So this is the nature of the world showing itself in ways that it hadn't previously. So you have to deal with that. Okay, so that's that. Instead of saying, well, there's some rule over here that said at this time, and now's the time to adjust according to the culture and develop a smrti, for the time, so to speak. So what I'm saying is that varnashram is a little, properly understood, is a little flexible, like any social system. It has to be. That there is a moral reality that's ontologically grounded, that's for sure. What exactly it constitutes to be moral in different circumstances may change. It may not be immoral in some instances to cultures at times in history to cut down a tree, where other times there's few trees and there's a whole problem, that the environmental problem that's coming down, the most immoral thing you could do, for example. So a lot of these are a number of these varnashram advocates that seem to make determinations about what can and cannot be done in bhakti based on varnashram don't understand varnashram very well, in my opinion. You cite Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where Jiva Goswami says, yes, the that bhakti that's not in accordance with the sruti, smrti, puranas, and so forth, that's a disturbance to the society. But then he says, of course, this refers, what he means to say is this refers to the Bhagavad Purana, and it refers to the Vaishnava smrti and shrutis, governing the path of Vaishnavism, not the Manu Samhita or this one that govern the varnashram marg. Similarly, in the 11th canto, the 20th, I think it's the 20th chapter, the 9th verse. It might be the 9th verse of the 20th chapter, but I think it's the other way around. There's a strong statement there that one who has faith in bhakti no longer has an obligation to the varnashram system. And Jiva Goswami writes a lengthy commentary on it. He seems to identify faith as like firm faith in bhakti, which indicates the surfacing of gyan, real gyan, one's obligation within a varnashram system to those varnashram mandates and so forth is transcended. And he says about statements that seem to say the opposite, that Bhagawan's statement here overrides them. So you may have somebody wrote, I've heard this, Bhargava wrote the Bhagavad Samhita, and there's a statement there about women not initiating unless they reach a certain, direct experience of Bhagawan or something like that. But this is a varnashram consideration. According to the time and circumstance, that was the culture. But to think that this is a rule, then that is spiritual and is a misunderstanding. And Bhagavan's statement in the 11th canto overrides it. So not all statements of Scripture are equal, right? I think that also addresses your question. Not all statements of the Scripture are equal. You have to look and see who's speaking, when, what is the time, what are the circumstances, what the nature of the book is, and so forth. So, and that any book that is, in a broad sense, considered the Veda. I mean, there's books that say Shivastu Bhagavan Swayam, Shiva Purana, Shiva the Supreme Person. So what should we do now? This is brought up by Jiva Goswami and Tapasandara. He says some Puranas are written for people in the Tamaguna, some for the Rajaguna, some for the Sattva-guna. Bhagavatam's written for transcendence, the Nirguna. So he's speaking of the relativity of the Scripture there, right? Relativity relative to the path that you're on. So we this whole idea that if you don't follow varnashram and you're not an advanced devotee, then there's going to be a problem. You need varnashram to be more moral. I don't really understand the argument. What if you are following the path of bhakti? Let's say you're initiated by Prabhupada and he asked you to not have sexual intimacy outside of marriage or even outside of the pursuit of procreation, and you find that you can't follow that, or you haven't been able to follow that, and so we should follow varnashram. I mean, what are you going to going to get another rule? I guess. I mean, that's not a rule in varnashram. So I guess you're okay. I'm following varnashram now, so I guess it's okay. I mean, I don't know what they're talking about. It's like bhakti doesn't have any power to. It doesn't have any inherent moral fiber to it. Of course, it does. The path of bhakti it makes you moral, ethically sound, and so forth, if properly understood. You accept what's favorable for Krishna's bhakti and reject what's unfavorable. So, just kind of rambling on the topic here, but I can't remember every aspect of your question. I hope that myself with some thoughts on the topic. Bhakti Marg ki jai.
Madan Gopal quoted Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto as well. Guru Maharaj 11:29 says,
Yeah, there you go.
as long as one is not satiated by fruitive activity and has not awakened his taste for devotional service by Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, one has to act according to the regulative principles of the Vedic injunctions.
Yeah.
Guru Maharaj, can I ask a quick follow-up on that?
Yeah.
So it seems like so many devotees, most devotees have not satiated their desire for good activities. And also when you mentioned to Swami said that you have to have firm faith in bhakti. Like, what does that actually mean? Like the stage of nishta, or like it seems like it's the more advanced.
Yeah. I would say that let's use Baladev Vidyabhushan's categories. He says there's sanishta, parinishta, and nirapeksha devotees. Nirapeksha means renunciates. Parinishta means householders who are detached, but because they're householders, they have different responsibilities and duties. And so within a varnashram society, they follow the varnashram system without attachment to it, not thinking that this is going to help my bhakti, or if I don't do this, it's going to hinder my bhakti, but to do it as an example for other people that shows that devotees, householders, are religiously sound people, right? And then there's the sanishta. So this is then Baladev's classification. Then so this is a class of devotees who would who do mixed bhakti. So they follow the varnashram system, and maybe they offer the fruits of their work to Krishna, like we spoke about earlier. The problem, of course, is that there is no varnashram system here. What are you going to do? Create it? I mean, just decide I'm a Kshatriya or whatever. I'm a Sudra or a Brahmin in any way. I mean, you can't make these things up. There was a whole structure in society and scriptures and books, and it was it was like as known and understood to people as the laws of your country are. What you have to do to drive a car. I mean, you have to have a license. You turn right here. You stop here. You let that person on the right go first. Your turn comes around on a four-way stop. And these are the speed limits, and so on and so forth. So varnashram was understood like that, and it was in place like that. So it's not in place. So what are you going to do? Bhakti has a learning curve to it. So there is anishta bhajana kriya. It's unsteady. So there will be ups and downs in that stage. Narada says you should go for bhakti. And what if you fall along the way? He said, no problem. At least you've gone that much further. And when you pick up, you'll pick up where you left off, because the results from bhakti are eternal. So that's a pretty radical statement. So I think the statement from the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam does pertain to a circumstance that it doesn't exist, today. So what to do? You just rely on bhakti, and Sridhar Maharaj used to give an example. If you've fallen on the floor, well, you have to use the floor to get up. So if you're taking shelter of Krishna, then who's going to help you get up better than Krishna? There's no higher to go. So rely on him. But that said, I think the verse from the 11th canto that you're asking about answers a question that is part of one of Mohan's question, that being that if a woman attains nishta, firm, therefore you cannot apply the rules of varnashram to her with regard to how she can express herself or serve in the context of bhakti. Her nishta is not going to be different than a man's nishta. And if you're in a society where women take prominent roles in the world, even heads of state and so forth, then a leading spiritual role should be available to a qualified woman as well as a qualified man. If you're going to give the role to men, I mean, you might not in the previous culture have given it to men because it was normal for women to take a leading role in anything other than motherhood, but the society is different. So, but you have to, I think you really have to, and Prabhupada said it many times, that while he advocated a varna ashram society, which he thought was the best social system, he said a number of times in his own books, but it is impossible today. Therefore, we do Nam Sankirtan. This is the whole. So go on with Nam Sankirtan. Does that help, Krishna?
Yeah, so basically it sounds like since you can't re-establish the varnasrama, so then both that statement you could, in the modern times, you could just take it as follow the social conventions and, moral life of the existing society if you can't do just pure bhakti.
How could Haridas Thakur follow the varnashram? He wasn't allowed to be included in the varnashram rituals. Yeah. So what did he do? He did Nam. He just took shelter of Nam. So, here's our patron saint, right? The Nam Acharya. And he just happens to be outside of the varnashram system. That's convenient for all of us. It tells us that we should take shelter of Nam. That is the solution to our fallen condition, and appreciate the generosity of Nam Prabhu. But yes, you're correct. All right, so good to be with you all, and I look forward to our next meeting. Hare Krishna.
Safe travels, Guru Maharaj.
Thank you.
Bye.
So just an announcement before everybody goes, because as Guru Maharaj mentioned earlier on, there won't be a Swami call next week. But I believe we'll be back the week after on the 29th. But as a bonus, there'll be lots more classes in the coming week. So from Wednesday through Saturday, there'll be a morning lecture, 11 a.m. Chile time, and Q&A 6 p.m. Chile time. So that's Wednesday through Saturday. We'll sort out a poster and an announcement with the some of the time differences, but I think 11 a.m. for example would be 9 a.m. Eastern time, although I'm not sure if that changes with the summertime changes. We're kind of in this weird luminal space at the moment because we haven't changed our clocks in Europe. But so we'll figure out. Worst comes to the worst, know that the Chile time is 11 a.m. And 6 p.m. and then translate according to your locale. Use Google. So like I say, so that'll be Wednesday through Saturday. There'll be no class on Sunday. But then there'll also be a Q&A at 11 a.m. Chile time on Monday, a week Monday. So, and then we should be back to normal 2 weeks today. So but there'll be a poster put out. So we'll put it on Facebook and some other places like WhatsApp groups and like that. So keep your eyes open, and we look forward to seeing you all soon. Have a great time in Chile, all the devotees in Chile. Haribo. Go find Anthony. Haribo.
It was